The Great Hall of the Galactic Dominion Council buzzed with tension. Representatives from 17 different alien species sat around a massive circular table that floated in the center of the room. Each delegate wore the ceremonial robes of their homeworld, but today was not a day for ceremony. Today was a day for war. Admiral Vextar of the Hegemony stood at the center of the floating platform. His tall, muscular frame cast a long shadow across the polished floor. His red skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke. The other council members leaned forward, listening to every word. "Fellow council members," Vextar began, his voice echoing through the chamber, "we face a threat unlike any we have encountered in 3,000 years of galactic peace." He pressed a button on his control device. Holographic images appeared above the table, showing a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked peaceful and quiet, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. "This is Earth," Vextar continued, "home to the species known as humans. Our intelligence reports show that in the past 100 years, these creatures have advanced from primitive steam engines to faster-than-light travel. They have gone from riding animals to building starships." A murmur of concern rippled through the council. Delegate Zixara from the Crystalline Collective raised one of her 6 arms. Her body was made of living crystal that reflected the light in rainbow patterns. "Admiral, surely you exaggerate," she said, her voice tinkling like wind chimes. "No species can advance that quickly. It took my people 5,000 years to achieve space travel." Vexitar's expression grew darker. He pressed another button, and the hologram changed to show grainy images of human cities, human ships, and human technology. "I wish I were exaggerating, Delegate. Look at these images. 100 years ago, humans lived in simple wooden buildings and traveled by horse. Now they have cities that stretch to the clouds and ships that can cross the galaxy in days." The council chamber fell silent. Every delegate stared at the images with growing alarm. They had all heard rumors about the humans, but seeing the evidence was different. Councillor Thrak from the warrior clan slammed his massive fist on the table. His scarred face showed the experience of 100 battles, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "If these humans are so dangerous, why haven't we acted sooner?" he demanded. Vextar nodded grimly. "Because we underestimated them. We thought they were just another primitive species that would take thousands of years to become a threat. We were wrong. Dead wrong." The hologram changed again, showing ships emerging from Earth's orbital stations. The human vessels looked different from the massive, heavily armored warships that the Dominion species preferred. They were sleek and smooth, with no visible weapons or heavy armor plating. "Our scouts report that humans have been launching these ships for the past 50 years, Vextar explained. "They claim the ships are for exploration and trade. But we have detected energy signatures that suggest weapons far more advanced than anything in our arsenal." Delegate Morden from the hive mind spoke next. His insect-like features twitched nervously, and his compound eyes reflected the light from the holograms. "What do you propose, Admiral?" Morden asked, his voice buzzing like a swarm of bees. Vextar straightened to his full height and looked around the circle of delegates. "I propose we give the humans an ultimatum. They must submit to Dominion authority immediately, or we will destroy them before they become too powerful to stop." The council erupted in discussion. Some delegates nodded in agreement while others looked uncertain. The debate continued for hours, with voices rising and falling as different species argued their positions. Finally, Elder Kasmoth from the Ancient Order called for silence. The old being was one of the most respected members of the council, having lived for over 800 years. When he spoke, everyone listened. "Admiral Vextar speaks the truth," Kasmoth said slowly, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. "I have lived through the rise and fall of many civilizations. I have seen what happens when a powerful species is allowed to grow unchecked. We cannot allow the humans to become the next galactic superpower." One by one, the delegates cast their votes. The result was unanimous. Humanity must submit or be destroyed. Vextar smiled grimly as he prepared the ultimatum message. The text was simple and direct. "To the governing bodies of the species known as humans, you will immediately surrender all military assets, accept Dominion oversight of your government, and begin paying tribute to the Galactic Council. You have 72 standard hours to comply. Failure to submit will result in the complete annihilation of your species." The message was transmitted across the galaxy to Earth, carried by quantum communication arrays that could cross vast distances in seconds. Within hours, the greatest armada in galactic history began to assemble. Ships from all 17 Dominion species converged on a staging area just outside the solar system. The fleet was massive beyond imagination, 50,000 warships of every size and type. There were the massive dreadnoughts of the hegemony, each one capable of destroying a planet. The crystalline ships of the collective sparkled like jewels but carried weapons that could turn solid matter into gas. The organic vessels of the hive mind pulsed with life and swarmed with smaller fighter craft. The ancient ships of the Elder Order moved slowly, but carried weapons that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory, watching as more ships continued to arrive. The view screen showed a sea of vessels stretching as far as the eye could see. Each ship represented the military might of an entire star system. "Status report," Vextar ordered. His tactical officer, a young hegemony warrior named Koltar, consulted his instruments. "All fleets have reported in, Admiral. Total count, 49,732 vessels. We have enough firepower to glass every planet in the solar system 10 times over." Vextar nodded with satisfaction. "And what of the humans? Any response to our ultimatum?" Koltar checked his communication console. "Nothing yet, Admiral. But we're monitoring all frequencies. If they try to call for help or coordinate a defense, we'll know about it immediately." The hours passed slowly. The Dominion fleet waited in formation while scout ships kept watch on the edges of the solar system. The deadline approached with no word from Earth. Then, with only 6 hours left in the ultimatum, the human response finally came. A single ship emerged from Earth's orbital shipyards. Koltar stared at his scanner readings in disbelief. "Admiral, you need to see this." Vextar looked at the tactical display. A lone blip appeared on the screen, moving slowly away from Earth toward the Dominion fleet. "Scanner analysis?" Vextar asked. "Single vessel, approximately 800 meters in length. Sleek design, minimal energy signature. No visible weapon systems or heavy armor." Vextar laughed loudly, the sound echoing across the bridge. His officers joined in, filling the command center with the sound of alien amusement. "One ship," Vextar gasped between laughs. "They're sending one ship to face our entire armada?" He wiped tears from his eyes and looked at the view screen again. The human vessel was indeed alone, looking tiny and insignificant compared to the massive Dominion fleet. "Perhaps it's a diplomatic vessel," suggested Koltar. "Maybe they're coming to surrender." Vextar nodded, still chuckling. "That must be it. They've realized the hopelessness of their situation and decided to submit rather than be destroyed." The human ship transmitted a simple message. Coordinates for a meeting point in neutral space. Halfway between the fleets, Vextar considered the request. "They want to parley." How amusing. "Very well, we'll humor them. Perhaps they'll provide some entertainment before we accept their surrender." The inevitable Victory moved to the designated coordinates, followed by a small escort of other command ships. The human vessel was already waiting when they arrived. As Vextar prepared to receive what he assumed would be Earth's surrender, he couldn't shake a small feeling of unease. Why would a species send just one ship? What could they possibly hope to accomplish? He pushed the doubts aside. Numbers didn't lie. 50,000 ships against one was impossible odds. The humans had to know they were beaten. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered a troubling question. If the situation was so hopeless, why didn't the human ship show any signs of fear or desperation? The answer to that question would change everything the Dominion thought they knew about humanity. The human ship glided silently through space toward the meeting point. Its hull was smooth and unmarked, reflecting the light of distant stars. No weapons were visible on its surface, no massive engines or armor plating. To the alien observers, it looked more like a work of art than a warship. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the inevitable Victory, watching the approaching vessel with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. His tactical officers had run every scan possible on the human ship, but the results were puzzling. "Analysis complete, Admiral," reported Koltar, frowning at his instruments. "The ship's hull is made of an unknown metal alloy. Energy readings are minimal, almost like they're running on backup power. I'm detecting life support for a small crew, maybe 30 people at most." Vextar stroked his chin with one of his 4 hands. 30 people against 50,000 ships. Either these humans are incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. The human vessel came to a stop exactly at the designated coordinates and transmitted a message on standard diplomatic frequencies. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional, speaking in perfectly accented galactic standard. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Defiance. I request permission to come aboard your flagship for face-to-face negotiations." Vextar's eyes widened in surprise. Not only did the humans speak their language fluently, but she was requesting a personal meeting. He had expected a surrender transmission or perhaps a plea for mercy. "Admiral," whispered his second-in-command, Commander Yextal, "this could be a trap. We should maintain our distance and demand their unconditional surrender." Vextar considered this, but his curiosity won out. "No, I want to see what these humans are planning. It will be amusing to watch them beg for their lives in person." He activated the communication system. "Captain Chen, you are granted permission to board. You may bring a small diplomatic party." "Thank you, Admiral. I'll be coming alone." The statement sent a ripple of surprise through the bridge crew. Even the most confident diplomats brought bodyguards and advisors to important meetings. This human was either showing incredible trust or incredible arrogance. 20 minutes later, a small shuttle detached from the human ship and flew toward the inevitable victory. The Dominion vessel's hangar bay was filled with armed guards, all waiting to see what kind of creature would emerge. The shuttle landed with barely a whisper of sound. Its design was as sleek and mysterious as its parent ship, with no visible seams or mechanical components. The boarding ramp lowered smoothly, and Captain Sarah Chen stepped out. The assembled aliens stared in surprise. They had expected something intimidating or alien, but the human woman looked remarkably ordinary. She was of medium height with short brown hair and wearing a simple navy blue uniform with gold trim. Her only equipment was a small electronic tablet tucked under her arm. Chen walked calmly through the corridor of armed guards, nodding politely to each group as she passed. She showed no signs of fear or nervousness despite being surrounded by creatures that could easily kill her. The guards escorted her to the main conference room, where Admiral Vextar and the other senior officers were waiting. The room was designed to intimidate, with high ceilings, dim lighting, and furniture that emphasized the physical superiority of the Dominion species. Captain Chen entered the room and looked around calmly, taking in the assembled alien leaders. There was Admiral Vextar with his forearms and red skin. Commander Yextal stood beside him, his reptilian features arranged in what he thought was an intimidating scowl. Other officers from different species lined the walls, all of them larger and more physically imposing than the small human woman. "Captain Chen," Vextar said, his voice echoing in the large chamber, "you stand before the combined leadership of the Galactic Dominion. I assume you're here to discuss the terms of your species' surrender." Chen smiled politely and placed her tablet on the conference table. "Actually, Admiral, I'm here to discuss the terms of your withdrawal." The silence that followed was so complete that the only sound was the hum of the ship's life support systems. The alien officers looked at each other in shock, wondering if they had heard correctly. Commander Yextal was the first to recover. He stepped forward, his scaled hands clenched into fists. "Did you just demand that we withdraw? Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you're facing?" Chen turned to look at him calmly. "Commander, I'm facing 50,000 ships crewed by approximately 15 million beings from 17 different species. Your combined firepower could destroy every planet in the solar system. Your technology has been developed over thousands of years of galactic conquest." She paused and looked around the room, making eye contact with each officer. "But you're missing something important. You're counting ships and weapons and crew members. Those are just tools. What really matters in war is capability." Vextar laughed, but it sounded forced. "Capability? Captain, we have the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. What possible capability could one ship have against 50,000? Chen activated her tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the conference table. It showed detailed technical specifications and energy readings that made several of the alien officers lean forward in sudden interest. "Admiral, you're making the same mistake that every military leader makes when facing humanity for the first time," Chen said quietly. "You're fighting the last war, not the next one." The holographic display changed to show the human ship's internal structure. Instead of the cargo holds and crew quarters the aliens expected, They saw something that made their blood run cold. The ship was filled with devices they didn't recognize, powered by energy sources that shouldn't exist. Your scouts have been watching Earth for decades, Chen continued. You've seen our cities grow and our ships launch. But you've only been seeing what we wanted you to see. Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? I mean that humanity learned long ago that the best defense is the one your enemies never see coming. While your species spent millennia building bigger guns and stronger armor, we focused on making the concepts of guns and armor obsolete. Chen touched her tablet again, and the display showed energy patterns that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about physics. The readings suggested weapons that could manipulate matter at the quantum level, shields that existed in alternate dimensions, and propulsion systems that bent space-time itself. Commander Yextol studied the displays with growing alarm. These readings are impossible. Energy cannot be contained in patterns like this. Matter cannot be manipulated at this level without massive power sources. You're right, Commander, Chen agreed. It would be impossible using your technology. But humanity took a different path. We didn't try to overpower the universe. We learned to work with it. The conference room fell silent again as the implications sank in. If these readings were accurate, then everything the Dominion thought they knew about military technology was wrong. Admiral Vextar struggled to maintain his composure.
Even if your technology is as advanced as you claim, you still have only one ship.
We have 50,000. The mathematics are simple. Chen smiled again, and this time there was something unsettling about her expression. Admiral, mathematics is exactly the problem. You're using the wrong equation. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed tactical simulations. You're calculating 50,000 ships versus one ship. But that's not the real equation. The real equation is 50,000 targets versus one weapons platform. The alien officers watched in horrified fascination as the simulation played out. It showed the human ship moving through the Dominion fleet like a shark through a school of fish, disabling vessels with weapons that seemed to ignore shields and armor completely. This is just a computer simulation, Vextol protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Would you like a demonstration? Chen asked politely. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every instinct told the alien commanders to refuse, to maintain their distance and their illusions of superiority. But they were military officers, and they needed to know what they were really facing. Vextar looked around the room at his fellow commanders. He saw uncertainty in their eyes and doubt, and the first stirrings of something that felt uncomfortably like fear. What kind of demonstration? He asked carefully. Chen's smile became almost predatory. Choose your most heavily defended ship, Admiral. Your proudest achievement, the vessel you would stake your reputation on in battle. Without hesitation, Vextar answered. The Crushing Fist, flagship of our heavy assault division. Its shields have never been penetrated. Its armor has never been breached. In 300 years of warfare, that ship has never been seriously damaged. Perfect, Chen said, making notes on her tablet. I assume you'd like your crew to survive the demonstration? The casual way she asked the question sent chills through everyone in the room. She wasn't boasting or threatening. She was asking for clarification on a technical detail. Of course we want the crew to survive, Vextar managed to say. Good. That makes things more challenging, but it's certainly possible. Chen closed her tablet and looked around the room one more time. Gentlemen, I suggest you observe this demonstration very carefully. The bridge of the inevitable victory buzzed with tense activity as the alien commanders prepared to witness humanity's demonstration. Admiral Vextar stood at the center of the command deck, his forearms crossed as he watched the main view screen. Captain Chen stood beside him, her small human form dwarfed by the massive alien officers surrounding her. On the screen, the Crushing Fist hung in space like a monument to Dominion military power. The ship was enormous, stretching over 3 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was covered in layers of quantum-hardened armor that could withstand direct hits from stellar cores. Energy shields shimmered around it like a soap bubble made of pure force. There she is, Vextar said proudly. The finest warship ever built. 8,000 crew members. Weapons that can crack moons. Shields that have deflected the combined fire of entire enemy fleets. Captain Chen nodded politely as she studied the massive vessel. Impressive engineering, Admiral. How thick is the armor plating? 15 meters of compressed neutronium alloy, Commander Yextol answered smugly. It would take a supernova to penetrate those defenses. And the shield generators? Quantum displacement barriers operating on 17 different frequencies, Vextar replied. Even if an enemy could match one frequency, the others would compensate. It's mathematically impossible to breach those shields with conventional weapons. Chen made notes on her tablet, nodding as if she were a student learning from a teacher. Fascinating. And you're confident that this represents the peak of Dominion defensive technology? Absolutely, Vextar declared. The crushing fist is invulnerable. In 3 centuries of warfare, no enemy has ever managed to inflict serious damage on her. Captain Chen smiled and activated her communication device. Defiance, this is Captain Chen. Please prepare for Demonstration Protocol 7. The response came immediately in the same calm, professional tone. Acknowledged, Captain. Demonstration Protocol 7 is ready. Awaiting your command. On the view screen, the sleek human ship moved slowly toward the crushing fist. It looked absurdly small compared to the massive dreadnought, like a minnow swimming toward a whale. Captain Chen, Vextar said carefully, I want to be absolutely clear about something. The crushing fist is not a derelict training target. It's a fully operational warship with 8,000 living beings aboard. I understand completely, Admiral, Chen replied. As I mentioned, keeping the crew alive makes this more challenging, but it's certainly within our capabilities. The casual confidence in her voice made several of the alien officers exchange worried glances. This human woman was either bluffing on an incredible scale, or she possessed knowledge that made their most advanced technology seem primitive. The Defiance came to a stop approximately 50,000 kilometers from the crushing fist. At that distance, it was barely visible on the view screen, just a tiny dot of reflected light. Tactical analysis, Vextar ordered. Koltar consulted his instruments. No weapon systems detected on the human vessel. No energy buildup indicating an attack preparation. Their ship appears to be in passive scanning mode. Captain Chen spoke into her communicator again. Defiance, you are clear to engage. Acknowledged. Engaging now. For several seconds, nothing happened. The 2 ships hung motionless in space, the massive, crushing fist and the tiny Defiance. The alien officers stared at their instruments, looking for any sign of an attack. Then Koltar's console began flashing urgent warnings. Admiral, something's happening to the crushing fist. I'm reading massive energy fluctuations in their shield matrix. On the view screen, the energy barriers around the dreadnought began to flicker like a candle in the wind. The 17 different frequencies that made the shields mathematically impossible to breach were failing one by one. How? Commander Yextal demanded. We detect no weapons fire, no energy beams, nothing. Captain Chen watched the display with professional interest. Quantum dissolution field, she explained calmly. It disrupts the strong nuclear force that holds matter together. Very precise, very efficient. The shields around the crushing fist collapsed completely, vanishing like popped balloons. But the demonstration wasn't over. The ship's massive hull began to change color, shifting from the dark metal gray of neutronium alloy to a dull, lifeless brown. Structural integrity failing, Koltar reported, his voice rising with alarm. The armor plating it's decomposing at the molecular level. The crushing fist didn't explode in a burst of flame and debris like a ship destroyed by conventional weapons. Instead, it simply stopped working. The lights went out. The engines went silent. The weapon systems powered down. In less than 30 seconds, the most powerful warship in the Dominion fleet became a dead hulk drifting in space. Status of the crew? Chen asked. Koltar checked his sensors with shaking hands. All life signs normal. Life support is functioning on emergency power. They're alive, but completely helpless. Captain Chen nodded with satisfaction. Perfect execution. The quantum field was calibrated to disable the ship without harming the organic components. Admiral Vextar stared at the view screen in shock. The pride of the Dominion fleet, a vessel that had conquered star systems and defeated entire armadas, had been reduced to scrap metal in half a minute. And the human ship that did it showed no signs of strain or power loss. This is impossible, he whispered. The energy requirements alone should have drained your ship's power completely. Admiral, you're still thinking in terms of your own technology, Chen replied. You assume that advanced weapons require massive energy sources. But what if I told you that the quantum dissolution field actually generates more energy than it consumes? The statement was so contrary to everything the aliens understood about physics that several officers laughed nervously. But their laughter died quickly as they realized the implications. Commander Yextal stepped closer to the viewscreen, studying the disabled dreadnought. The hull structure. It looks like the molecular bonds have been severed, but the atoms themselves remain intact. The ship hasn't been destroyed, just disconnected. Exactly, Chen confirmed. Your ship is now held together by little more than molecular adhesion and surface tension. Any significant stress will cause complete structural failure. As if to demonstrate her point, a small piece of debris floating nearby bumped gently against the crushing fist's hull. The impact, which should have been completely harmless, created a spreading crack that ran along the ship's entire length. The crew needs to be evacuated immediately, Chen continued. The ship is structurally unsound and will break apart if they attempt to move under power. Vextar activated his communication system with trembling hands. All ships, emergency evacuation protocol for the crushing fist. I want every available transport moving now. As rescue ships rushed toward the disabled dreadnought, the alien commanders struggled to process what they had witnessed. Their most advanced technology had been rendered obsolete by a weapon they couldn't even detect. How long have humans possessed this technology? Vextar asked quietly. Captain Chen consulted her tablet. The first successful quantum dissolution tests were conducted 47 years ago. We've been refining the technology ever since. 47 years? Commander Yextal repeated in disbelief. You've had weapons like this for nearly half a century? Oh, this is hardly our most advanced system, Chen replied with a slight smile. The Defiance is what we call a patrol vessel. It's designed for reconnaissance and light engagement. The bridge fell completely silent. Every alien officer stared at the human captain with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Admiral Vextar found his voice first. If this is a patrol vessel, what do your actual warships carry? Chen's expression became unreadable. Admiral, I think that's a conversation we should have in private. Some information is too sensitive for a public forum. She looked around the bridge at the assembled officers, many of whom were still staring in shock at the broken remains of the crushing fist. However, I can tell you this much, Chen continued. Humanity learned long ago that the best weapons are the ones your enemies never see coming. What you've witnessed today is our way of knocking on the door. It's not our way of kicking it down. The rescue operation continued in tense silence as transport ships carefully evacuated the crew of the disabled dreadnought. Every movement had to be slow and gentle to avoid causing the structurally compromised hull to collapse completely. As the last survivors were brought aboard the rescue vessels, Admiral Vexter realized that everything he thought he knew about military strategy had become obsolete in the span of 30 seconds. The Dominion's advantage wasn't just reduced, it was gone entirely. Captain Chen, he said slowly, I think we need to discuss exactly what humanity wants from this encounter. Chen nodded and closed her tablet. I think that would be wise, Admiral. But first, you might want to inform the rest of your fleet about what they just witnessed. I suspect they'll want to know why their most powerful warship just became their most expensive piece of space junk. As the alien commanders began the difficult task of explaining the impossible to their fleet, Captain Chen stood quietly at the observation window, watching the rescue operation with professional detachment. She had delivered the message humanity intended to send. The private conference room aboard the inevitable Victory felt smaller than it actually was. Admiral Vextar sat across from Captain Chen, while Commander Yextal and two other senior officers flanked them. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the weight of what they had all witnessed. The destruction of the crushing fist had sent shockwaves through the entire Dominion fleet. 50,000 ships that had seemed invincible just hours ago now felt fragile and vulnerable. If humanity could disable their most advanced warship so easily, what chance did the rest of the fleet have? Captain Chen, Vextar began carefully. Before we continue, I need to understand something. The weapon you used on the crushing fist. How many of your ships carry similar technology? Chen leaned back in her chair and studied the alien admiral with calm eyes. Admiral, you're still asking the wrong questions. You want to know about our weapons, our ship counts, our tactical capabilities. But those are just details. She activated her tablet and a new holographic display appeared above the conference table. This one showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with thousands of star systems marked in different colors. The real question you should be asking is this. How long have we been watching you? The hologram zoomed in on specific systems, highlighting trade routes, military bases, and strategic resources. The level of detail was stunning. Every major Dominion installation was mapped and analyzed, complete with troop strengths, defensive capabilities, and supply lines. Commander Yextal leaned forward, his reptilian features showing alarm. This intelligence, it would take decades to gather information this detailed. 63 years to be precise, Chen replied. Ever since our first deep space probes detected your communication networks. The revelation hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. For over 60 years, humanity had been secretly observing galactic civilization, learning their strengths and weaknesses, studying their technology and tactics. But that's impossible, Vextar protested. Our sensors would have detected your probes. Our security networks would have identified the intrusions. Chen smiled and touched her tablet again. The hologram changed to show technical specifications for human stealth technology. The designs were unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen, using principles of physics that seemed to bend reality itself. Admiral, our probes exist in a state of quantum superposition. They're simultaneously there and not there until observed. Your sensors can't detect something that technically doesn't exist in your frame of reference. The concept was so far beyond Dominion science that several officers shook their heads in disbelief. But the evidence was undeniable. The intelligence they were seeing could only have been gathered through decades of careful observation. Why? Vextar asked quietly. Why watch us for so long? Why not make contact earlier? Chen's expression became serious. Because we learned from our own history, Admiral. On Earth, when a technologically advanced civilization encounters a less advanced one, the results are usually catastrophic for the weaker society. We didn't want to be conquered, and we didn't want to become conquerors. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed historical records of Dominion expansion. World after world had fallen to their superior technology and military might. We watched how the Dominion operates. We saw what happens to species that resist your authority, and what happens to those who submit. Neither option was acceptable to humanity. Commander Yextal studied the human captain with new respect and wariness. So you decided to become strong enough that we couldn't threaten you? No, Commander. We decided to become advanced enough that the concept of threat becomes meaningless. Chen activated another holographic display, and the alien officers gasped in shock. It showed Earth's true defensive capabilities hidden from view until now. Orbital platforms that could manipulate gravity itself. Weapon satellites that existed in pocket dimensions. Defense grids that covered not just Earth but the entire solar system. The ships you've been seeing launch from Earth aren't our military vessels, Chen explained. They're exploration and research ships. Our actual defense fleet never leaves the solar system because it doesn't need to. The hologram zoomed in to show one of the orbital platforms in detail. It was massive, larger than most Dominion battleships, but it was completely invisible to conventional sensors. Dimensional anchor technology, Chen continued. Our defense platforms exist slightly outside normal space-time. They can observe and act in our universe, but they can't be detected or attacked using conventional methods. Admiral Vexitar stared at the display with growing horror. How many of these platforms do you have? Enough, Chen replied simply. Admiral, the Defiance isn't our most powerful warship. It's barely even classified as a warship at all. It's a reconnaissance vessel with light defensive capabilities. She touched her tablet one more time, and the hologram showed technical specifications that made the alien commanders lean back in their chairs. The quantum dissolution field that had destroyed the crushing fist was listed as a non-lethal crowd control device. Non-lethal? Yextal repeated weakly. It completely disabled our most powerful ship. Yes, but it didn't kill anyone, Chen pointed out. Our actual weapons are designed to end conflicts quickly and permanently. The quantum dissolution field is what we use when we want to make a point without causing casualties. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. The aliens were beginning to understand that humanity hadn't sent one ship to face 50,000 because they were arrogant or desperate. They had sent one ship because one ship was more than enough. What do your real warships carry? Vextar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Chen's expression became unreadable. Technologies that make the quantum dissolution field look primitive. Weapons that can make stars go nova. Devices that can erase entire fleets from existence by removing them from the timeline. Tools that can turn planets into energy and energy into matter. She closed her tablet and looked directly at Admiral Vextar. But Admiral, those weapons will never be used unless you force us to use them. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to conquer or dominate anyone. Then what do you want? Vextar demanded. The same thing every civilized species wants. Trade, cultural exchange, mutual cooperation, and respect. We want to be part of galactic civilization, not its master. Commander Yextal leaned forward. But you could conquer us easily. Your technology is centuries ahead of ours. Why offer cooperation instead of demanding submission? Chen smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Because, Commander, conquest is what weak civilizations do when they can't achieve their goals through better means. Why take by force what can be freely given? Why rule through fear when you can lead through example? She reactivated the holographic display, showing trade routes and diplomatic relationships that could exist between humanity and the Dominion species. Earth produces technologies that could revolutionize your civilizations, medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries, energy sources that could power your worlds without depleting resources, transportation methods that could reduce travel time between stars from months to minutes. The alien officers stared at the projections with growing excitement. The technologies humanity was offering weren't just advanced, they were revolutionary. In exchange, Chen continued, we want access to your cultural knowledge, your artistic traditions, your unique perspectives on existence. Humanity has been alone in the universe for so long that we've forgotten what it means to be part of a larger community. Admiral Vextar struggled to process everything he had learned. In the span of a few hours, his understanding of the universe had been completely overturned. The Dominion wasn't the supreme galactic power. They were barely even players in the real game. Captain Chen, he said slowly, you mentioned that humanity has been preparing for this encounter for over 60 years. This entire situation? You planned all of this, didn't you? Chen nodded calmly. From the moment we detected your first scout ships approaching the solar system, we knew that first contact would eventually happen, and we wanted to ensure it happened on our terms. She stood up and walked to the observation window, looking out at the Dominion fleet. You see, Admiral, humanity learned something very important from our own history. The way a civilization handles its first contact with others determines the nature of all their future relationships. And you wanted to make sure that relationship was based on mutual respect rather than dominance, Yextal concluded. Exactly. The show of force, the ultimatum, the overwhelming fleet, it was all predictable. We've studied your species for decades. We knew exactly how the Dominion would respond to the discovery of an advanced human civilization. Chen turned back to face the alien commanders. The question now, Admiral, is how the Dominion will respond to the discovery that they're not the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Admiral Vextar looked around the room at his fellow officers. He saw confusion, fear, and uncertainty in their eyes. Everything they had believed about their place in the universe had been proven wrong, but he also saw something else. Opportunity. The technologies humanity was offering could transform Dominion civilization in ways they had never imagined. 3 hours after Captain Chen returned to the Defiance, Admiral Vextar stood before an emergency session of the Dominion fleet commanders. The main conference hall was packed with officers from all 17 species, their faces showing a mixture of confusion, anger, and fear. The news of the Crushing Fist's destruction had spread quickly through the fleet, but the details of humanity's true capabilities were still classified. Only the senior commanders knew the full scope of what they were facing. Admiral Kessera of the Crystalline Collective was the first to speak. Her crystal body reflected the harsh lights of the conference room as she gestured with her 6 arms. Admiral Vextar, we demand to know what happened to the Crushing Fist. Our sensors detected the destruction, but no weapons discharge. Commander Thrak of the warrior clan slammed his massive fist on the table. And why are we still sitting here talking instead of attacking? One ship destroyed one of ours. The response should be swift and overwhelming. Vextar looked around the room at the assembled commanders. These were the finest military minds of 17 different civilizations, veterans of countless battles and conquest campaigns. But none of them were prepared for what he was about to tell them. Fellow commanders, Vextar began, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. Everything we thought we knew about humanity is wrong. Everything we believed about our own military superiority is an illusion. He activated the room's holographic display system, and began showing the technical data that Captain Chen had shared. As the images appeared, the quantum dissolution technology, the dimensional defense platforms, the impossible energy readings, the room fell silent. Admiral Morden of the Hive Mind was the first to understand the implications. His compound eyes reflected the holographic displays as his voice buzzed with alarm. These readings, if they are accurate, then our entire fleet is obsolete. Not just obsolete, Vextar replied grimly. Irrelevant. The humans could destroy our entire armada without breaking a sweat. The Defiance isn't even a warship by their standards. It's a patrol vessel. Commander Yexitol stood up and addressed the room. I was present during the demonstration. I watched our most powerful warship become helpless scrap metal in 30 seconds. The humans used a weapon we couldn't detect, couldn't defend against, and couldn't understand. The room erupted in angry voices as commanders demanded explanations, called for attacks, or suggested immediate retreat. The chaos continued for several minutes before Elder Kazmoth raised one ancient hand for silence. Honored commanders, the old being said in his cracked voice, we face a choice that will determine the future of our civilization. We can continue to think like conquerors, or we can learn to think like diplomats. Admiral Kessera's crystal body flashed with angry light. You suggest we surrender to these upstart humans? Submit to a species that only achieved space travel a century ago? I suggest we survive, Kazmoth replied calmly. And perhaps if we are wise, we might even prosper. Vextar activated the holographic display again, showing the trade and cooperation proposals that Captain Chen had outlined. The humans aren't demanding our surrender. They're offering partnership. The displays showed incredible technologies, medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries, energy sources that could power entire worlds, transportation systems that could revolutionize galactic commerce. These technologies, Admiral Morden whispered, they could transform our civilizations beyond recognition. That's exactly what the humans are offering, Vextar confirmed. In exchange for cultural exchange, diplomatic relations, and mutual cooperation. Commander Thrak stood up, his scarred face showing skepticism. And what guarantee do we have that this isn't a trap? What stops them from crushing us once we lower our defenses? The question hung in the air for a long moment before Vextar answered. The fact that they could crush us right now if they wanted to. Their defense systems have been tracking every ship in our fleet since we entered the solar system. If they meant to destroy us, we would already be dead. The brutal truth of the statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Every commander present had spent their careers believing in the supremacy of Dominion military power. Now they were faced with evidence that they were barely even a threat to humanity. A communication alert sounded, and Vextar's tactical officer appeared on the main screen. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. Captain Chen requests permission to address the fleet commanders. Vextar looked around the room at his fellow officers. Shall we hear what she has to say? The vote was unanimous. Whatever the humans wanted to tell them, they needed to hear it. Captain Chen appeared on the main view screen, still wearing her simple naval uniform. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiance looked calm and professional, with no signs of the advanced weapons that had devastated the crushing fist. Admiral Vextar, honored commanders, Chen began. I understand that you're facing some difficult decisions. I wanted to offer some additional information that might help with your deliberations. She activated a display on her end, showing real-time tactical data. As I mentioned to Admiral Vextar, Earth's defense systems have been monitoring your fleet since you arrived. However, I think it's important that you understand something about those systems. The tactical display changed to show energy readings from the dimensional defense platforms hidden throughout the solar system. The numbers were staggering. Each platform generated more power than the entire Dominion fleet combined. These platforms have been aimed at your fleet for the past 6 hours, Chen continued calmly. They could destroy every ship you have in approximately 12 seconds. However, they were not activated as a threat. They were activated as a precaution. Commander Thrak leaned forward. What kind of precaution? The precaution that some of your commanders might decide to attempt a desperate attack rather than accept the new reality, Chen replied. If that happens, our defensive systems will respond automatically. There will be no negotiation, no warning, no second chances. The brutal efficiency of the statement sent chills through the assembled commanders. They were being offered a choice, but the consequences of choosing wrong were absolute. However, Chen continued, her tone becoming warmer. If you choose cooperation, those same defensive systems will be used to protect your homeworlds as well as ours. The technologies that make our weapons so effective can also make our shields impenetrable. She displayed a new set of projections showing mutual defense agreements and shared technology protocols. Imagine a galaxy where no world lives in fear of invasion, where resources are shared freely because scarcity becomes obsolete, where the energy spent on building weapons is redirected toward exploration, art, and discovery. Elder Kazmoth spoke first. Captain Chen, you paint a beautiful picture, but change is difficult, especially for civilizations that have known only one way of life for millennia. How do we know that your species won't become the very thing you claim to oppose? Chen smiled, and for the first time, her expression showed genuine warmth instead of professional courtesy. Elder Kazmoth, that's an excellent question, and it goes to the heart of why we approached first contact this way. Power corrupts when it's used to dominate others, she continued. But we're not offering to dominate anyone. We're offering to make domination impossible for everyone, including ourselves. The holographic display changed to show Earth's internal government structure. It was unlike anything the Dominion species had ever seen, a complex web of checks and balances that prevented any single group from accumulating too much power. Our advanced technologies come with built-in safeguards, Chen explained. They cannot be used for conquest or oppression. They literally will not function if directed toward those purposes. And if we refuse your offer? Admiral Vextar asked quietly. Chen's expression became serious again. Then you return to your homeworlds and humanity returns to isolation. We will not attack you unless you attack us, but we will also not share our technologies or defend your worlds from other threats. Other threats? Several commanders asked simultaneously. Commanders, humanity isn't the only species that's been advancing in isolation. The galaxy is changing, whether the Dominion adapts or not. The question is whether you'll be part of that change or a victim of it. The conference room fell silent as the commanders processed this final revelation. They had come to the solar system believing they were the supreme power in the galaxy. Now they discovered they might not even be among the top 10. Admiral Vextar looked around the room one more time, seeing the faces of officers who had suddenly realized that their old way of thinking was not just wrong, it was dangerous. Captain Chen, he said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Dominion Council, I would like to request formal negotiations for a mutual cooperation treaty. Chen smiled. Admiral, I would be honored to begin those negotiations. But I should mention that several other species have been monitoring this encounter with great interest. Earth has received formal requests from 43 different civilizations asking to open diplomatic relations. The implication was clear. The galaxy was about to change dramatically. With or without the Dominion's participation,